This Rod Amateau adventure comedy film somehow managed to squeak out a profit of $500,000 above its $1 million budget when it was released in August of 1987. Shamelessly and foolishly based on the then popular series of children's gross and weird trading cards, this live-action adaptation is perhaps the stupidest product tie-in in the long and pathetic history of Hollywood adaptations. Seriously, this PG-rated movie was co-produced by a freaking chewing gum company. The ramshackle and nonsensical plot follows Mackenzie Astin of The Facts of Life fame as a dweeby and horny teen who accidentally uncovers 7 disgusting mutant baby creatures who live in a garbage pail inside an antique store for some reason. Compared to his untalented co-stars, Astin actually does a halfway decent job with some of the poorly written material, but honestly, not even an impeccable performance from Daniel Day-Lewis could save this shit show. Portrayed with hammy acting by a septuplet of dwarf actors, these kids robotically waddle around the cheap-looking sets, constantly spewing out stupid puns, bad jokes, and grotesque fluids from their bodies. The rubberized freak show of midgets can't even execute a good fart joke correctly. Every line of dialogue they utter is eye-rolling and cringeworthy, especially when they break into the picture's lone musical number for no reason. Their facial expressions were reportedly going to be enhanced and finished with post-production animation, but due to budget and scheduling limitations, these elements were never completed, resulting in some positively creepy, undead-looking 4-foot-tall doll figures with frozen mouths and hilariously oversized heads. Austin takes advantage of the misplaced kindness of the Garbage Pail Kids to help win the affection of Katie Barberi, an older girl he has the hots for. But why he's ever attracted to this mess of a human is beyond me. She's shown to be nothing more than a manipulative and inconsiderate jerk with poor fashion sense who constantly exploits her so-called friends. Speaking of fashion, a fair deal of the idiotic plot revolves around black market clothing sales, which only serves to remind modern audiences of how dreadful and ridiculous 80s fashions were. The film is backed by a painfully distracting score from Michael Llyod that sounds like the music to a jazzercise workout.
And in the meantime, you guys could...
Getting started with the stuff for the fashion show? Yeah.
Come on, guys, please. Please, can you do it for me, please?
All right, we'll do it.
All right.
But if you don't check out the hole for the ugly...
There'll be a ton of garbage on your head.
And dodge. If you pink out on us, I wouldn't want to be your toes.
An attempt to impart some ethical values concerning outward appearances and treating others fairly is entirely lost in the insulting, crude, and distasteful script that frequently practices the exact opposite of what it is trying to preach. Over the course of the 97-minute experience, you can practically feel your intelligence diminish in real time. The lone highlight of the picture, however, is Anthony Newley as a sage and mysterious mentor character who shares this apropos line of advice towards the beginning of the film. Losing is relative, my dear boy. What matters is conceding with grace. Unfortunately, this slowly paced crapfest ignores its own advice and fails to concede at all, instead going full tilt towards the absurd unashamedly. It's one sad, never-ending gag that goes from unfunny to insufferable, with no redeeming qualities whatsoever. While it deserves its place upon the pantheon of terrible films, it is hardly the absolute worst ever made, but that doesn't mean I'll ever try watching this again. The Garbage Pail Kids Movie, a colossal mistake of corporate greed. Now let's see what you had to say in the YouTube comments. No surprises here, a double one for the Garbage Pail Kids Movie. A film that the nostalgia critic once called the Holocaust of cinema, this movie is truly awful, through and through, with none of you mentioning anything positive. A whopping 75% of all who voted rated it a garbage.